Show me what you can do. You're a nigga. Take time and wine like you have something to prove. Waistline, 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 I like it how you move. Show me what you can do. Show me what you can do. Show me what you can do. Work that areas. My girl, come to the front now. Push up your hand now. Show off your work now. Push up your grade now. You teach your class now. Exam time now. Show them your pass now. Yeah. One in the grade now. Back it up and push it up and swing it up and bring it back down and put on your face and match up the place and turn around and roll up your waist and back it up now. Push it up now. Swing it up and bring it back down and turn around and spin around and slow it down. Show me what you can do. Show me what you can do. Show me what you can do. You're a nigga. Come to the front now. Push up your hand now. Show off your work now. Push up your grade now. Yeah. Second line, yeah. Let me break it down. Check it out. I don't need to be on top. I just need to be there when the beat gon' drop. Hit me with the music so my feet don't stop. 345, I represent the realest rock. Life is incredible. We be consuming these beats like they edible. Level up. On the track, getting better. Roll like a slingshot, slinging rocks. We gon' let it go. Pop, pop, pop. You better know. I be on top. Yo, pass me the rock. Yeah, never let go, cause the love in your soul gotta burn, gotta glow. Never let go. 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 Never let go, cause we got our country to wake up. Everybody stop, play, wake up. Cause the youth them is wasting. Please can we save them, come on. We got our country to wake up. Everybody stop, play, wake up. Cause the youth them is wasting. Please can we save them, come on. We got our country to wake up. Everybody stop, play, wake up. Cause the youth them is wasting. Please can we save them, come on. Depression may grab at you, try to put you in a chokehold. But this is what happens when life is a savage. It's about to bring damage, so hold on, never let go. 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 justly, love mercy, walk humbly. That's how the world should be. Don't judge a book by a cover until you look under and see just what the pages read. Misunderstood, misconstrued. Don't let your attitude ruin the best of you and me. I just wanna be free to be the best part of me. Don't watch me drown. Show me love when I am down. And now we need equality. Let me tell you about my brother called Ray. Now down here in the islands, Ray is Ray. But back home, his identity, his birthright is out of sight. 'Cause all you see is white light. You never saw the man, you never saw his heart. 'Cause all you ever saw was the black part. I'm a black man, the best you ever known. Let me step up on this microphone and take a seat on my throne. There's other black kings who don't submit to the system and don't need to wear the ring. Power to the people, got my mind on blast. About to take this message to the street, fast like flash. And in the dash, we gon' flash. Breaking down these barriers to race that's been dwindling our past. I just wanna be free to be the best part of me. Don't watch me drown. Show me love when I am down. And now we need equality. Our hearts are so deceitful. We don't realize that we're all equal. But everyone's repairable with a gift that's a miracle. There's a crown of great renown in the book that's upside down. So open up the page, dissipate the rage. It's time to engage. It's time to engage. I just wanna be free to be the best part of me. Don't watch me drown. Show me love when I am down. And now we need equality.
Conversation is back. Join us on YouTube and Facebook this Saturday at 10 a.m. for an interview with Hazard Management and the National Weather Service. Remember to like Cayman Times Facebook and YouTube pages to get your reminder for this important conversation on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Information, education, and motivation. Real life, real topics. Welcome back to Cayman Conversations Season 2. Now streaming on Cayman Times Facebook and YouTube channels. We're in the middle of the hurricane season and the forecast has changed. John Tibbetts, Daniel Coleman, and Teresita da Silva joined me recently to talk about hurricane season preparedness, disaster shelters, and insurance. Now here's that conversation. Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Cayman Conversations. And today we're going to be talking with hazard management and those good folks over there for a second part of the hurricane preparedness conversation. We want to say good day to Mr. Tibbetts, John Tibbetts, Director, General National Weather Service, Danny Coleman, Director of HMCI, and today we introduce Teresita Da Silva. She's from Preparedness and Planning Manager, MCI. And good morning, folks, and welcome back to Cayman Conversations.
Good morning, Ralph. Great to be here.
Okay. Well, John, I'm seeing the Atlantic Ocean getting very active. Tell me what's going on over there.
Well, for right now, we've got major storm Hurricane Lee on a fairly new system, Margaret, that has at a tropical storm level. And they are both tracking towards the west and northwest. Neither of these systems look as if they will be any threat to the Cayman Islands. In fact, probably not to the Caribbean either, for that matter. In terms of looking at the season, when we go back all the way to April, and we were going into the hurricane season, and in April and May is usually when we get our early season predictions. There was the Atlantic Ocean was a bit warmer than normal. They were forecasting an El Nino to form. And so the predictions at that time were not as strong and robust as they are now. The latest forecast that has come out as of August the 3rd calls for 18 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. And the reason for that basically is that while we have a fairly healthy El Nino developed, the reality is that the Atlantic Ocean is setting all kind of records with sea surface temperatures. And sea surface temperatures is one of the necessary ingredients for the development and formation of storms. So it does look as if the latter part of the season, as we move into the second half of the season, I think September the 11th is supposed to be roughly the midpoint of the hurricane season. The storms that usually are of a high level of concern for the National Weather Service and the Cayman Islands people, usually looking from September to November timeframes, because the genesis area is usually the Western Caribbean. And so we usually don't necessarily have a nice lengthy warning time to give the people. Moreover, systems that form in the Western Caribbean usually have more than enough energy to develop into major hurricanes. We're talking Category 5 hurricanes and what have you. So that's where we're currently at right now.
Thank you. And then just last week, we just saw a storm that went into Florida. And for those listeners who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, this is a recording on Friday, the 8th of September, just in case you listen to us a couple of days after this recording. But the information that you'll hear today is very important and should be remembered and known throughout any hurricane season. All right, we want to say good morning and welcome again to Daniel. And Daniel, it's great to have you back. I know you've been busy. One of my concerns is the capacity of the hurricane shelters. Can you give us any updates on the hurricane shelters? There are new ones, or what's the capacity and people thinking about using them?
Thank you, Ralph. And again, good morning to all the listeners. So shelters always are a bit of a concern to us hazard management. We spent many years trying to get more online, including private shelters. So we've been working with a lot of the private companies to try and train their teams up and make sure that they can provide for their own employees. So if anyone is listening and think that might be a good thing for their own office building, we're very happy to help them to ensure, again, that takes the pressure off the public shelters. We currently have 19 shelters, 15 in Grand Cayman. And we're working, obviously, this year we've expanded John Gray High School, as well as we're hoping to get Town Church of God on at the end of this year. There has been some delays, obviously, so the nature of the beast, but we really do hope to get them on at the end of the year, and also adapt some other classrooms at Clifton Hunter High School. So there's a lot of work still going on behind that. But again, we ourselves are still concerned about the shelter capacity. I might add, we are the best as far as capacity goes in the all ATs in the Caribbean. So, that's one thing to be proud of, I guess. But, we always want to make sure we have capacity for a very large size of our population. But, I mean, just to say, public shelters aren't comfortable places. You're not going to get your hot shower. You're not going to get your hot meal. So really strongly encouraging the public to have a plan for that. Now, if it's going to a friend's house, or it's going to your own house, staying in your own house, assuming it's safe and fit for purpose. Not on the coast, it's not ideal, obviously. And also being a 2-story building is obviously a really important thing. But try and have a plan and make sure that you do, you think about your options well ahead of the season. As you say, Ralph, we're right in the middle of the season now. So it really is time to make sure you have those plans. And if you want to reevaluate, think about speaking to friends, speaking to your boss, speaking to your business, and see if you can shelter there in place at your actual business, as opposed to potentially a public shelter. But we are always working to make sure that those shelters fit for purpose. And just to say, Ralph, it's one of those things, the criteria for public shelter, because of liability and so forth, is obviously quite high. So it's not just a sort of matter of bringing on a shelter ad hoc and saying, okay, well, great, we have there's a storm coming next week, let's add a building. There's significant work that goes into making sure shelters are safe. And as a result, and that means the infrastructure, as well as the windows and the roofing and the supplies inside the shelter itself. So we are making sure that we are, trying to expand those, but with the population growing, it's always going to be a bit of an issue.
Yes, and I also think of those people in those areas that are prone to flooding, and their properties are not really theirs. They're probably renting those properties, and so that the care and concern about the safety of those may not be our priority or in their best interest at a time when a storm is approaching. The owners are more looking at their homes and so on. So I get concerned that some of our guest workers may have challenges when a storm arrives, and we have to find a place for them. And so this kind of sort of we should talk about, and let people think about them too, because it's so important. We hope we don't have a hurricane, but like John says, we hope for it doesn't come, but it may. And so we have to be prepared.
And I agree with you, Ralph. I mean, we're all vulnerable. We live on a hurricane belt, and we know the Cayman Islands are all vulnerable to hurricanes and all emergencies, other emergencies. But there are some that are more vulnerable than others. And you talk about this. We're all in the same boat. Well, we're not in the same boat. Some are much more vulnerable. Some are living in housing that's not fit for purpose, potentially for a storm. So it's acknowledging those vulnerabilities. And I know Teresita's doing a lot of work about social vulnerability, which no doubt she'll talk about.
Yes, very good. Well, I see you brought one of your co-workers here with us.
The fabulous Teresita De Silva, our preparedness and planning officer.
Manager.
Manager. Yes.
Welcome, Teresita, and tell us, what do you do?
Thank you, Ralph, for having me. So my job really entails looking at the holistic preparedness for the island. So I review the plans, I engage with the community to do training. One of our programs is a community emergency response team. So we look at vulnerable communities, we train them in various aspects so that in the event that something takes place, it's not just a hurricane, it could be anything, that they have those skills in the community to sustain themselves until emergency services can come and facilitate or assist. In addition to that, we do a lot of public education to the schools, to private as well as public organization, because it's really important for us to get the word out. As you said, there's a lot of persons who are here that may not be residents or locals, so they may not be aware of the different hazards that we are prone to. So we really try to get the word out to ensure that those persons who are new to the island understand what their risks are, how to prepare and respond to hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding. So my job really is to make sure that everyone is prepared at any given time. And one of the large projects that we're working on this year to help with that preparedness is the Social Vulnerability Index. So what this really does is allow us to look at the various factors in terms of So we use the economic statistics data in terms of the census that looks at, a person's age, their education, and their disabilities, as well as now we go into the community and look at, what type of utilities they have, the infrastructure of their homes. And this just gives us a good idea of who will need assistance before, during, or after an event. So we're not being reactive, we're being more proactive and understanding, okay, well, if a certain type of hazard happens in a certain era, we know persons will need X, Y, and Z beforehand, or we know they'll need to be evacuated, or they need certain resources afterwards. So we can really start to plan efficiently and effectively with all the partners across government as well as the community to make sure that they are resilient, or they are cared for in a manner that fits their needs. So it's a really good project that we're doing right now. We're hoping to expand it and make sure that we cover all 3 islands. Right now, we're just doing 2 pilot communities to kind of get the ball rolling and create that foundation. But as we get familiar with the processes and techniques in terms of how to build it, then we'll do the entire island, and we'll be in a much better position to determine what type of plans we need, if we need more shelters, or increase our stocks in the island, given what we know about the communities.
And this is good. It actually fits into what we were just speaking about in a while recently with Daniel. Do you have any other projects coming online soon, Daniel?
Yeah, we've got some really exciting stuff going on at Hazard Management this well, in particular this month, but several, the last few months it's been, work in progress. So we're doing a lot of work with our flood sensor project. Again, this is being able to monitor floods before they happen, before we see them on the actual on the road. We've got these gauges coming in, and again, that's going to be a brilliant project. We're also doing a tsunami modeling project. We've got a team from NOAA coming in about 3 weeks' time to do some. They've already done the modeling, but again, it's just discussing with us what the actual risk is. How much? I think one of the issues we've always had is like, what is a tsunami risk to the Cayman Islands? And they're going to help us really discover what that risk looks like. We've also got a team from the UKHSE talking about hazard materials. They arrive on Sunday. And again, we've done a lot of work recently on hazard materials and working with stakeholders like the Ministry of Health and Wellness, as well as first response agencies, to make sure we understand what the risk is for hazard materials. Again, another project, storm surge modeling team comes in this week as well. So there's so much going on in regards to storm surge modeling, tsunami modeling, hazard materials, flood sensors. A lot of what we're doing right now is all like looking for the evidence, looking for the data to support the work that we do. So there's one thing saying, yes, there could be a tsunami risk, but actually we want to know what that risk is. We're also working very much on the National Risk Register. So that, again, encompasses what risks we have, what the probability is, what the impact might be. And as a result, we can do much more planning because we are looking at the risks itself as opposed to just assuming what they might be. So yeah, lots of fun things going on, but it's a pretty busy time. So we certainly don't need any storms this year.
All right. Mr. John, yes, you are the head weatherman. Now we're talking about the weather, but the other disasters trickle over into your domain, or are you involved, or do you contribute to the overall planning, even though you're the master at the weather?
Well, I think to a certain extent, I'm not sure about the cart and the horse question on that, to be honest with you, because the National Weather Service has been around in some form or fashion from way back in the 1980s. And it's interesting that back after we got Hurricane Ivan's impact and what have you, and even leading up to that, it was representatives of the individuals in the National Weather Service, notably Mr. Fred Sambula, working with what was at that point the National Hurricane Committee under Mr. Nixon from the fire department, that actually pushed for the creation of Hazards Management Cayman Islands. And then officially our organization became the Cayman Islands National Weather Service. So both our organizations are, or the final point as to the creation of them, or the driving point behind them, was really Hurricane Ivan and what it did here. Now, the National Weather Service and Hazards Management Cayman Islands, we work very closely together. And
But we're
Miss
joined at the
Danielle,
hip.
there was
I think
we're
we're joined at
joined.
the hip most of the year anyway.
Well, in fact, when we end up going out for
Mm.
meetings and interviews, a lot of times they go, well, hazards management is in here to talk with us today, and they forget the National Weather Service and hazards management are really two
Exactly.
separate entities.
Yeah.
But we do work very closely together, and yes, we're joined at the hip. And so things like storm surge sensors and floods and all this kind of stuff, the National Weather Service is right there with hazards management, working with them, and making sure that we're getting things. They're making sure that we get things in place and what have you. I would say that we one of the projects that I've been kind of pushing on for the National Weather Service for a while now is a network of automatic weather stations, and this uh, network of automatic weather stations is actually tied in with the storm surge sensors. We're getting a couple of complementary storm surge sensors, but we are going to need more than those, and we're hoping to get them out of that project, as it were. Additionally, the rest of those automatic weather stations then would be able to allow us to do a localized modeling over the Cayman Islands and be able to better predict when rainfall events are going to come and utilize the flood sensors then and the data collected at the flood sensors to say if you're going to get flooding in a particular area. So the organizations do work very closely on a number of projects. So I'm not sure what the cart and the horse business, but yeah, we're joined at the hip.
Very good. And sometimes the questions that come to my mind, and I'm the kind of interviewer who thinks about this thing before I ask a question. And if I don't know, I'm going to ask because
Right.
I'm sure there are other people who will love to understand what's the connection between hazard management and National Weather Service or vice versa. And so it's always good to get this explained clearly and to see the connections and how we all are working hand in hand to make sure that
That's,
we're in a safer place.
yeah, just to add to that, I mean, obviously, hurricanes, of course, hazard management and the National Weather Service are literally, as we stick two together. We're very much a partnership.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of other emergencies, of course, that have an implication. The weather does have an implication. For example, when we had the big fire at the dump last year, the year before, whatever, we need to know what the weather's doing to know whether we should evacuate people
Right.
and also what the impacts are. So there's a lot more implications of that relationship in different emergencies as opposed to just storm activity or flooding. It
Yeah,
goes a long way.
and just to follow on with that, obviously, you take for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a big oil spill on here and stuff like that. The Hazards Management Cayman Islands will be asking the National Weather Service information on waves and currents and what have you. All right, to provide guidance on where how that spill is going to spread or move, as it were. All right, so this is the kind of the nature of the beast, as it were. Two organizations working hand in hand to get things done.
Okay, great. Well, Teresita, I'm gonna bring our next question to you, and it's one of the final questions of this show. Um, Being a former banker, I was always concerned about property insurance during this time of year. And over the years, I know that many properties are not insured adequately or even insured at all. And I know that Simon was having discussions with insurance companies and agencies about this. But just generally, since you are speaking to preparedness and planning, how important is ensuring that your property is insured on a timely basis and for the correct amount, especially knowing that we're heading into hurricane season, there may be some storms.
I think it's significantly important that part of your preparedness should be to check what your policy is, what it entails, and how much you're actually covered for. Because in the event, you may think that you're owed a certain amount given the damage to your house, but in reality, you may get a significant less coverage or a significant less payout, which would then put you in a really tricky financial situation. So to ensure that you have a better idea of what you should be, what is covered, what you will be owed if something were to happen, would allow you to plan a lot better. So part of what we've done with our hurricane booklet is to include some of that information in our booklet now, so that it kind of gives persons a guidance in terms of what to check for, what type of questions to ask, and who to speak to. And it's not just hurricane season, it could be for anything. So it could be just flooding that happens any time in the year, it could be fire. So just ensuring that it's not just hurricanes that you're focusing on, but making sure that you have proper coverage for any eventuality, because you don't want to have to potentially abandon your home because you can't afford to fix it back, or you're in a really poor financial situation because you didn't ensure that you had the right coverage.
I think just to add to that, and Teresita is totally right, she's just created a brilliant booklet, or has a booklet. But one of the things we do strongly suggest is making sure people take photographs of all their items for the insurance later on. I mean, one of the saving graces I know for us as a family in Ireland was that my mum had just literally about a month beforehand done all the insurance, and she'd taken all the photographs, and everything was just literally in a Ziploc bag ready to go to the insurers. And we do really appreciate right now, financially times are tough for a lot of people. Paying a mortgage is hard enough. Cost of living is very, very difficult. So insurance is often one of those things that seem to get potentially not considered in the budget. But again, it just takes one storm to realize how important insurance is. And if you can do it, we really strongly recommend that you do get the insurance that you need to cover your households.
Yes, very good.
Ralph, just to piggyback something on this.
Go right ahead.
When people watch the interview, they might ask the question of why would HMCI and National Weather Service be concerned about individuals having proper insurance and what have you. Okay. Seems almost to be a personal matter. Okay. However, let's realize something. You get a major hurricane going through here, and the island is beaten up, and there's major infrastructure damage to homes and to everything else around. Okay. Having insurance and acting fast on insurance leads to rebuilding or repairing your home fairly quickly after that. Okay. Now, you might have a hurricane this week and it may just mash up 80% of your home. And while you might think that you have all the time now to do your repairs, there may be another major hurricane coming next week. Okay. And if your home is not repaired fairly quickly, then you're in danger. Now, we went on and we were talking about, oh goodness, the name is just passing right now. Places where people can go and stay out and stay out for hurricanes and what have you.
Emergency shelters.
Emergency shelters. Right. There you go, Daniel. Thank you. If you got a major hurricane goes through here and a large amount of the homes are all damaged, then a lot of those individuals, realizing that their homes are damaged and not feeling safe, are going to be flooding to the shelters. All right, which exasperates the problem of keeping our people safe. All right, so this is where health and home insurance comes in as something that is very critical in the whole scenario of everything that's going on.
Yes. Well, folks, we're coming close to the end of this segment, and we're just one day, or tomorrow is considered the peak of the hurricane season, in September 9th. I know that day very well. John, in your wrapping up, comments, can you tell us if everything's going to start getting better going forward, or we got to keep our guard up until the end of November?
You can't ask that question. That's not a fair question. He hasn't got a crystal ball.
And you're going to ask that to a weatherman.
Yeah,
well, listen, I first of all, a hurricane can come anytime. Okay, a hurricane can form up anytime. In fact, we've had storms outside of the hurricane season. The hurricane season is just basically the peak or the highest, the time at which we have the highest likelihood of storms. Okay, but we really have had storms in. I remember hurricanes way down in January. Okay, so are we safe going into the second half season? No. The second half of the season for me is the one that I kind of edge out onto the very edge of my seat, because it is at this time that we, generally speaking, usually have some major hurricanes forming. And again, as I said earlier, The formation point or the genesis area is in the Western Caribbean, given at times not having proper warning time for the public. So we're going into that part of the season right now. And as you said earlier, you're starting to see activity ramping up and what have you. And activity will come and go. One minute we will have 3 and 4 storms out there, next minute they won't have any. But in the second half of the season, I'm particularly scared because of the level of the storms and where they normally form. Um, that provides a even greater threat to the Cayman Islands.
Thank you. I appreciate that honest. Daniel.
I think it's one of those things. At the end of the day, we just have to prepare. We all accept the risk living in the Cayman Islands, knowing that there's a hurricane season every year, and there are other emergencies that can happen. And I think the more confident you are because you're prepared, the more you've got your supplies in place, the more you have your family plan for any emergency, the more the less nervous you're going to be. So again, TerraSeed is just about to release this brilliant all hazard booklet, and that covers every sort of hazard we can think of and how to respond to that. And that's going to be out very, very soon. But just be prepared. I mean, that's the only thing we can do to say we don't know what the season looks like the rest of the season. We know obviously we're going into a much higher, part of the season than the original side, and much less time to prepare for it. Yes. But that being said, again, there's nothing to worry about. It is just what it is, and we just need to make sure we're prepared.
Very good, thank you. Teresita, any final words?
Yes, sir. Just piggyback off what Danny said. It's important for us to be prepared. It's not just for hurricanes. It could be a tropical storm. We saw what Tropical Storm Grace did. So persons just need to be aware that don't just focus on the type of storm. Focus on there can still be a lot of risks that come along with that storm, whether it's storm surge, extreme rain, down trees. So just take the time to gradually build your emergency kit. Build a plan for you and your family. Always include your children because this can affect them as well psychologically. So just be mindful of that. I have 2 children of my own, so I always make sure that I talk to them about different hazards, hurricanes, explain that to them. So if it does happen, they're not scared, but they kind of understand what's taking place. So just make it a family-oriented preparedness and don't just take on the burden on yourself because it can be stressful. So just spreading that responsibility around to the family will be important.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, folks, gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for joining me here today in Cayman Conversation. And I hope to see you again soon, get an update. And we just hope that there's no hurricanes. But if there comes time, I'm sure we'll be prepared. And thank you. Have a great weekend. And thanks again. See you next time.
Thanks so much again, Ralph. Have a great day, and the listeners.
Thanks, Ralph.
Take care. Have a lovely day.
All right.
Bye.
We thank all guests and listeners for joining us. We invite you to add your comments on our social media feeds. Remember to like our Facebook and YouTube pages for your invitation for our next conversation. And I'll pick up our free newspapers on Wednesdays and Fridays. Cayman Conversation is a production of the Caymanian Times newspaper.
Red light.